back again after uneventful weekend of fights, honestly. There was some boxing, and then I know there was also the PFL Challengers Series, which is literally like a direct ripoff of Dana White's Contender Series. So I didn't really watch that, but I might watch. Actually, there was a women's one. I don't remember when it is, but there's like a couple of the girls who were on that last tough season that are going to be on it. So maybe that'll be interesting. But I don't know about you. I just think that the rip off part of it is kind of stupid. Like it's you couldn't think of like a better name than like the Challenger series. Like, oh, I wonder what made them think of the PFL Challenger series. So at least we got Bellator though this weekend making their CBS debut, which is good for them. Awesome for the sport too, because we got another network, the big network for Bellator, and hopefully that'll help them compete with the UFC a little more. Although I didn't realize this event was happening until like yesterday.
Yeah, of course not.
Yeah, dude. We know how it is with Bellator. You know what I did know it was happening though, because it's been slammed on the UFC page constantly, is Powerslap. I think we could probably get into that with starting. I think you already know what my thoughts are, and I'll get into mine, but I'll let you start with this one. What do you think of Powerslap and all that's come with it?
I mean, I don't think you can really like be surprised that it's getting. I mean, the concept was pretty simple when it was first like being talked about, and like when it was just a thought. I remember when I remember tweeting something along the lines of when it was reported that Dana White was just venturing into the thought of Power Slap, and then I remember just tweeting something along the lines of like, you worked so hard and all these years trying to legitimize just MMA as like an actual sport, not just just a bunch of meatheads just beating the hell out of each other, and then you get put on a press conference and you go like, I don't know, I might just have something wrong with me. Like I think there's just something wrong with me, and then there you have it. Now we're here. It's in full force. After this is like literally months before. It was like November that this was all being like talked about. Now you have Dana White taking it to his own freaking wife, and now it just makes it even that much more controversial, and it's just hard, so like almost like impossible to get behind. Actually, I mean, I would say almost impossible if the people weren't being straight up like just exploit, like they're getting just pocket change for this stuff.
2K and 2K was the one offered to Eric Spicely, who was in the UFC in the past, and like that's the other thing too. Like they're targeting like ex fighters too to like maybe probably make it more legitimate, and they're offering like 4K in total. Like, and I get that throughout the season it gets higher and higher, but that's just ridiculous. And it's not like MMA where it's a legitimate fight. This is no defense. You're just standing there and getting hit as hard as like anyone can hit you a few times in one night. And like I remember I saw that one guy who literally, I think it was a guy or a girl, I forget, fell forward and like almost looked like they did like a somersault when they were unconscious, and I'm like, ugh. I don't know. I don't like the look of it. The no defense thing is just nuts to me. Like I've said this before, TBS should be ashamed for even putting this on air, and like also even honestly like the refs and stuff, like, and the people who are like associated with the UFC who are like okay with this. Like we've already talked enough about like Dana and how hypocritical this has been with him, because even you mentioned it before when you said in like November or even before that. I remember when it was the Contender Series, like the last season of it, and he was talking about how he was starting to get a little like rattled by the fact that like these people were taking so much brain damage. And I remember saying on here at the time that like, yeah, okay, Dana, like you say that and like you're putting on these huge fights. I doubt he really gives a crap. It's just like him putting on a good PR stunt, and then comes out with Power Slap, which is basically like CTE in
I want to say
video form.
I want to say I was surprised at first when it was first being talked about. I mean, I was surprised about like what the whole concept was, and like, whoa, like this is actually gonna be like allowed like in stuff like on TV and all that. And then, but knowing who it is behind the whole thing, like it didn't come that surprising. It was just like questionable. Like I just said, like you're trying to like you finally get MMA to be like regarded as a legit sport. You know, you got this ESPN deal and everything. You know, that takes forever and stuff to do, but now you just like, but now it's like, okay, well, I'm not surprised since that it's Dana White who's, the most like as selfish and exploitive as it gets, and now he's taking these, these random people that are clearly just, looking for some sort of, quick buck or whatever. They're gonna do whatever for it clearly, and now they're out here just getting just that's
They're literally getting the shit
knocked
out.
Yeah, just like literally knocked like unconscious. It feels like these dudes are going down like stiff as a board.
You see like Jason Herzog like running to go catch the guy. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like, this is like one of the best refs in the sport.
Exactly, that too.
Doing
and
this
then,
crap
like,
at the UFC Apex, like, and it's crap. That's the only way to put it. Like, I hope this shit gets canceled so quick. I'm surprised they even made it to like the second episode at this point. I mean, I know there's definitely a casual following to this, but any MMA, every single post I've seen that's been slammed in our feeds, because if you follow the UFC, you basically follow Powerslap at this point, which is stupid. Like, I wish you could just mute those posts, but at the same time, you just see all these people shitting on it in the comments. And I also love, too, all the people who are getting paid to endorse it. Like, clearly, like, these just awful paid promos. Like, they had, like, DC, Mario Lopez, like, all these random people. So, I don't know. We didn't really talk about it in the past couple weeks, and, like, even though it was around. But I just kept seeing it. And especially with no fights last weekend, you're seeing it even more. I just can't take it anymore. I'm like, I hope this gets canceled. It's so awful. It's awful for the sport, like you kind of said, because they spent so long trying to get MMA legitimized. And Dana White, to his credit, did such a great job in doing that. And it's just, no pun intended, but it's a slap in the face to really just do this to the sport. I don't know. Because this isn't a sport. Maybe entertainment, but this isn't a sport. But to be quite honest with you, I'm not entertained by it in the slightest. And maybe that's just because, like, me and you are huge MMA fans, and we know how brain trauma like really is in this sport and in combat sports in general. So the fact that these guys are just willingly getting slapped and getting that, it just in one night pretty much, is, I don't know. I don't find many good things about it, to be honest with you. So I'd say with that, though, we should just move on to the legitimate sport and talk about the UFC just as a whole. I mean, we could start with so many different things. I know I saw this one post, and it was from Alex I think it's Behanin. I hope I didn't mispronounce it, because I love his content on Instagram. Shout out to him. But he was talking about how he interviewed a UFC fighter who's like a first-year UFC fighter getting paid $12K and $12K. And after like gym dues, manager fees, coaching fees, he only pulled in $3,500 for that year from the UFC. I would imagine. I would hope that he has another job. But is that not the craziest thing you've ever heard? $12K and $12K to be a professional athlete. Because the UFC, I love it. I like it. You know, like I can't totally crap on a company that we talk about almost every week, and they put on the best fights in the sport. But man, $12K and $12K.
Well,
like,
I mean,
come on.
I get that, but also like I also I get reminded of Dana going like, what was it along the lines of like, the fighters needing him and stuff.
Oh yeah, that was when he just got in trouble with the thing with his wife. Yeah, he said that if he took off for like 60 days, the company, his employees, the fighters, they would not.
And the thing was, he wasn't. If I'm not mistaken, he wasn't at the Brazil pay-per-view. And
no, he wasn't. I think he was probably checking in on how Powerslap was going.
And the pay-per-view went just fine. So,
yeah, I've said this before, like especially now with the ESPN deal, and you got like Endeavor running things, like who has all this money, but the way that it is, like Dana definitely built the sport into what it is now. That there's no question about it; it can't be denied. But to say that it can't run without him is just ridiculous.
It's like he's just like pillar by pillar, just taking it all down slowly. And now the fighters, it's like the fighters like by the day have to like just watch out more and more for themselves.
I don't know. I mean, I'm glad to see more free agents in the sport now. Like, you got Nate Diaz, Francis Ngannou, Luke Rockhold,
Yeah, the
even
whole
Mike Perry when he was a
Francis.
free agent, Roy McDonald back in the day. So I'm just happy that we're starting to see some diversity in like where the best fighters in the world are going. And I think with Francis, as we kind of talked about last week, we'll definitely be seeing more of that. But he said he was talking to Tyson Fury's team, but I don't know. I saw Chael say something, and I'm curious to see what you actually think of this. I forgot to mention this to you actually before. But Chael said he thinks that the reasoning why Tyson Fury is saying all this stuff like, well, let's do it in a cage with 4-ounce gloves, but only boxing. I think that the more Chael said this, so I'm stealing his thought, but I 100% agree with it. The fact that there's so many stipulations, it's never going to happen. Like, that's why he's making all these random stipulations, because the harder it is and the more complicated it is, the less likely it is that it's actually going to happen. But it's not. It doesn't look like Tyson Fury turned down the fight. And to be clear, like, I don't think Tyson Fury is scared of Francis Ngannou in any way in boxing, nor do I think the other way around. But I just think that there's no reason for Tyson Fury to risk losing his legacy to a guy who hits super hard and a dude who's never boxed before, really, like in a high level boxing match like that. So I don't know. I still don't see that one happening. I stand by that prediction. But we got plenty of fights coming up. There's the fight night next weekend, which starts at like 1 a.m. our time,
Yeah.
which is pretty rough. I told you before the show, I stayed up. I bought it was a live Louis C.K. special at Madison Square Garden. Like, it was like a live stream of him performing live, and I was like, oh, this will be funny. It'll help me stay up. And this is me thinking that the UFC card was like this past Saturday. So I watched the special. I'm exhausted because I worked all day. I fell asleep after the special. And I wake up the next morning, I'm like, oh, damn, I missed the UFC. Let me look. And I go on MMA Junkie, and I'm like, where's all the fights? Like, how could they not just, I know this card isn't that good, but why did they report on it? I look it up. It's in February next week, and I'm like, oh, come on. But maybe we'll see what happens next week when I watch it, or if I can manage to stay up to watch it, because obviously my plan didn't work this past weekend. But after this next week of fights, we do have some nice cards. We got UFC 284, which has, in my opinion, one of the biggest fights like in UFC history coming up, which is Islam Makhachev versus Alex Volkanovski for the lightweight title. And it's in Australia, so Islam's going into enemy territory, which is an interesting factor in this fight to me. But then you got like the talk from both sides. Islam's looking better than ever. Volk is looking better than ever. Who do we believe? And these are two of like the best fighters in the world fighting in their prime. Alexander Volkanovski. Let me just pull this up on like Tapology, because I don't want to butcher this in the slightest. Because these guys both deserve the credit that they've built in the sport. Yeah, Islam Makhachev 23-1, Alexander Volkanovski 25-1, and then besides that, there's still the interim featherweight title fight because Volk is going up between Yair Rodriguez and Josh Emmett. This is gonna be a crazy card, man. We got Jack Della Maddalena in it, and he's a prospect that we've been talking about forever. He's fighting Randy Brown. That should be a fun one. Jimmy Crute versus Alonzo Menefield. Justin Taffa versus Parker Porter. This is going to be a thriller down under, man. I can't wait for this, but I don't know if you have any thoughts on like the main event in particular, because like I said, I think this is one of the biggest fights of all time, and in the power slap hysteria, it's like we haven't been hearing about it whatsoever.
Well, you brought up Chael Sonnen before, so I'll bring up Chael Sonnen again, because I think he's kind of talking about. I guess maybe I was watching. It was only a clip I watched, but I guess I was watching it maybe out of context. But I thought I saw a clip of DC and probably just advocating for his guy in Islam and all that. But he said that Alexander Volkanovski beating Islam Makhachev would be the biggest upset in the sport. And I just thought, why is that? Like,
Yeah, I don't know
Alexander
about that one.
Volkanovski is number one pound for pound in the world. Like, why would that be the case? You know, like, I get is Islam's weight class, and Islam is in the absolute prime of his career, and like it's hard to believe that he's not gonna go just straight up from here. But I just thought that, like, I just said so. I was like, you know, number one pound for pound, the reigning featherweight champion, and still underrated somehow. And then Chael Sonnen was like, how can you be number one in the world and be underrated?
Yeah.
And then that helped me thinking, like, too, like, okay, well, it is an interesting dynamic, but
Chael has been spitting facts lately too. Like he was talking about this fight, and he said he's not sure if Dana White understands like the massive fight that he just kind of had fall on his lap here, because like the
yeah,
moment
I
in the
don't think
cage
so
too.
either.
Like remember that? Like when Volk like went in the cage after Islam won his title, and they agreed right then and there that they were gonna do it. Like shit like that doesn't happen on the regular. Like this is a champ versus champ fight. And I hope that the week of this thing gets slammed on our feeds
And
because
also you gotta factor in, maybe I guess this probably be more for like the newer upcoming guys. Like Islam is obviously already established, like he's the champion, but no Khabib in the corner, like that should be, that's gonna be something to watch. Pretty interesting, but yeah, like I still think I felt this way at first. I still feel now. It's like it's pretty even. I think it's pretty even fight. You can have a favorite, obviously, and an underdog, but I definitely can see it going either way for
I
both of
don't
these
know.
guys.
It's just so tough. Like
I don't know how. The thing is, I don't know how it's gonna go. So like, I just think both these guys like have so much up their arsenal that
yeah, like Alex has never been held down, and then you could say also he's never fought anybody as strong as Islam Makhachev, which you can't argue with.
Yep.
But that's the glory of this fight. Like I said this before, and I like even just thinking about it right now, I swear to God, it gets me so hyped. The fact that this is two current champions fighting in the middle of their primes in this sport, that's so awesome. Like this is one of the best fights that the UFC could make, and we have it, and it's coming soon, February 11th. I can't wait. Like this is gonna be awesome. Such a good event. Australia always is fun when they go there. Their crowds are sick. I remember when Izzy won his title and he had that sick walkout. That was really cool. So the atmosphere is gonna be crazy. And then the pay-per-view after that, you got John Jones versus Cyril Gane. Then after that, in London, it's Leon Edwards in the homeland versus Kamaru Usman in their trilogy. And then we just got the bombshell that's UFC 287 announced. Israel Adesanya is going to be having a rematch with Alex Pereira, who is now the current middleweight champion, which is kind of crazy to think about because Izzy was champ dominantly for so long, and then Pereira obviously beat him in that war. But then the co-main event, the return of Jorge Masvidal versus Gilbert Burns of all people, man. Like, dude, the fights just keep on coming. And that's why I said before, like, it's hard for me to just totally shit on the UFC for the fighter pay stuff and Powerslap because they give us all this at the same time. And 2023 is already starting off with a bang with all these great pay-per-views to start the year. And, like, I don't know, which fight gets you more? Actually, I probably know your answer to this, but Izzy versus Pereira or Burns versus Masvidal? Which one are you more hyped for at this point in time?
I think I'll say Pereira versus Adesanya. Just I like a good rematch. I think this is definitely a worthy rematch because I do want to. I feel like the pace in this one is gonna be like a lot more. Just up tempo. I think it's gonna be a war. Honestly, I'm not gonna make a prediction just yet, but I just think it's gonna be a slugfest between the both of them. More than it was the last time around. And obviously, the last time around was a very fun fight too. But
even their kickboxing fights were crazy. Honestly,
I think those are both fights that just need to happen. As simple as that. Maybe not necessarily. I know when it was announced that Dana White was gonna make the announcement and stuff. Like there was some people. Well, one, the time he said he was gonna announce it he didn't do it.
Dude, I'm glad you know that too. I didn't know if you had seen that live because I saw it on my Instagram like probably 15 minutes before 5:30. I'm like, oh, nice, I just got it. I go on there. And I had YouTube open for like 45 minutes. I was like, what is that? For like a 10-minute announcement. He told us about fights that we already knew about and then announced those two, which granted, huge fights. Like, even the return of Masvidal got me super hyped up. And I don't think he's going to fare well versus Gilbert Burns unless this fight stays on the feet. Then it's anybody's, honestly. But even then, I kind of still favor Gilbert just because he's like younger and he's a lot faster. I just think at this point, Masvidal is getting up there in age and he's taking more and more time in between fights. So it's interesting. And I don't think Gilbert's just
Well,
going to
yeah,
try and take
I
him
mean,
down.
it's encouraging too to see like, they're even being like a live, just like announcement of it. Like you don't really see that. At least like me, I don't know about if that was ever the case, but like anymore at least,
They're
it
very
doesn't really.
rare. I honestly
Yeah.
thought it was going to be a Connor versus Tony Ferguson tough announcement because that was like the weird rumor that was coming around. And it still kind of is, in the air, but who knows. And then when this came out, like, Adesanya versus Pereira seemed like it was going to come at some point, but Burns versus Masvidal completely came out of nowhere. So for
I think
that
it
one to get
was
announced, I was hyped.
it was. I think it was about finding Gilbert Burns a fight quick. Obviously, after like just handling Neil Magny just like that. So I think you definitely needed to find him a fight. There probably isn't too many guys I want to fight him right now anyways in the welterweight division. But Jorge
Bilal
Masvidal.
Muhammad, though, he deserves some credit
Oh
because he
yeah.
definitely would have. I refuse because this is my take. I think that Burns versus Bilal would have been the better fight for the title picture and just in terms of even skill level. But I think they want Masvidal in the title picture because Edwards is the champ, and that's a fight that would be so huge if they could get it. And the thing is with Burns, he might stand with Jorge Masvidal. Like he when he called him out in the past, he was saying like, "Oh, let's fight. We'll put it in the contract, no takedowns." And I don't know. I think he's serious about that. Like I think he genuinely wants to test himself on the feet against someone who's considered one of the best strikers in that division even now. So that's why this fight is so intriguing to me because I want to say Gilbert Burns by murder, but at the same time, I don't see Gilbert Burns just trying to take him down right away. So who knows what's going to happen with that. But I think this would probably be like a good spot to wrap. I think a relatively short show compared to the others, just because there were no real fights
For
to talk
one,
about.
too, I guess to regard like at least the Adesanya and Pierre fight.
Sure.
It's good to see Pierre's defending the belt at 185. Again. So like instead of just straight going right up to 205 and facing like obviously Jamal Hill or Yuri if when he comes back, anything like that. I think like he should be defending. He should be defending the belt at one. And then obviously like now he's fighting the guy he just took the title off of. So now it's the question of if he beats Adesanya. Now it's really a question of like when's he gonna move up to light heavyweight.
And what does Izzy do
Yeah.
at that point? Like, it's a lot of questions, man. It's an interesting fight for many reasons, honestly. The fact that this is their fourth time now, too, I'm impressed. Like, good matchmaking by the UFC. Like, this, like I said.
Yeah. Two fights that definitely need to happen. So
Hell yeah, man. I don't know if did they ever announce?
that's good stuff.
Let's see. Okay, yeah, no, they never announced where this one's going to be, but it's on April 8th, so they got some time, but...
They're saying New York.
Mate, really? Oh, you know what they might do? Because I know they've had April cards at the Barclays Center before. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, bro. Yeah.
Honestly, I might try and go to that if that's the case. So we got to keep our eyes up for that. Then maybe we'll get the Hurt Handbook live from UFC 287. How sick would that be?
We can figure it out. I know we can.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, we'll keep you guys posted on that. Be sure to like this video and subscribe. Check out episode 1 of Main Card Tiz if you haven't already. My guy's going to be sparring probably later on, so that's going to be interesting, and that'll probably be in the next video about it, which will come out at some point in February. We'll announce that when it's done. But with that, I don't know if you have any closing remarks before we go.
Nah, we're good. We're good.
All
We'll
right.
see you next time.
Easy guess. Hey, locker.